It Follows is a horror movie that I've wanted to see since I first read its plot synopsis. It follows a character played by Maika Monroe who, during a sexual escapade with a new boyfriend, is told that once they've had sex, that she will be followed by some sort of force which takes the form of anybody in the world. It could be a perfect stranger, it could be a family member, a friend, but this form will follow you at walking pace until it eventually catches up and murders you. And there is nothing that you can do. You can run, but it will eventually catch up. It will never stop. It follows, hence the title of the film. Now, that synopsis to me is absolutely brilliant. You know, it's such a terrifying idea that there is just this unrelenting, unstoppable force following you until it catches you. I think that's a really, really scary idea. You know, it's a very base human fear, I think, of being followed. So I was really interested to see this. Now, I've seen the film before I watched it. I've seen the film be receiving really positive reviews, people calling it a modern horror movie masterpiece. It's not. The way the film is shot is beautiful. Now, this is part of its problem, really. Now, the film is very clearly trying to homage the way that John Carpenter shot Halloween, you know, using a lot of mise-en-scène and wide angles, all the sort of old horror movie tropes in terms of visuals. It looks gorgeous, but I feel like in concentrating so much on the visuals of this movie, the director, a guy called David Robert Mitchell, has forgotten to actually put together a coherent script. The main performance by Maika Monroe is fine. I think even though she's not given an awful lot to work with in this movie, you don't really get an awful lot of insight into a character. She is a forever likeable presence. I really liked her in The Guest as well, which came out, it was either last year or the year before. But I thought she was pretty good in that. She's good in this. She has a very relatable, likeable presence. The way that she delivers lines is very sort of down to earth, and I do think she is a good actress. It's just a shame in this that she wasn't given an awful lot to work with. I did find the idea of this movie to be quite frightening, even though it is a very on-the-nose parable for sexually transmitted diseases. You know, once you've had sex with somebody, you inherit this curse that follows you, and in order to get rid of it you have to pass it on to somebody else. You know, it's a very on-the-nose metaphor. It also really copies films like The Ring, you know, about the cursed videotape, A Nightmare on Elm Street, a group of teenagers not being able to fall asleep, or in this case stop moving, otherwise they will be killed, and also the obvious, you know, the Halloween, the way it's shot and stuff like that. So the film is a bit of a hodgepodge of homages in terms of story and style to previous horror movies that are much better than this one. The script, however, is where it falls down. I watched the film from beginning to end and still didn't know the relationship between most of the characters in this. There is a central group of characters. I think two of them are sisters and the third girl is a friend, although it's never stated. And I don't really know the relationship between the two guys. There's not a lot there. They don't really flesh out the character relationships or give you any insight into the individual characters. You don't really get to know their personalities at all, other than how they relate sexually to each other. I can't really go into any more detail than that without spoiling it, but I did feel like the character stuff was completely undercooked in this and underdeveloped. And that was one of the most disappointing aspects, in as much as I didn't particularly care about any of them to really get invested in the film. Where the film's greatest fault lies, though, is in establishing the rules of this curse. Now, with a film like this that has an inbuilt mythology, the filmmakers always have to try really hard to establish the rules. This is something that Wes Craven did very well in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and also Hideo Nakata and Gore Verbinski did well in the Ring movies, both the original and the remake. This film, however, just doesn't do it very well. There is not that scene where you have a character researching the curse once they've learnt about it. And this is something that people have praised in reviews, you know, in saying that it doesn't spoon-feed the audience information. However, in doing that, in skipping that scene where you have the main character go on maybe Google or whatever to look for this curse, you're sacrificing your character's agency. Because as if the first thing you would do wouldn't be go on the internet, you know, that would immediately be the first thing you did. So I feel like they sacrifice character work in order to have a bit of a nudge to the audience. You know, it felt just really underdeveloped. Also, the curse itself, only the people who've had it or have it can see the figure walking towards them. Now, I understand that the director and writer will have done this to basically establish a way that they can distinguish who the curse is, because if you're with a group of people and say, can you see that person, and they say no, then you know that that person is the cursed demon thing, whatever it is, that's never explained. However, in having all the characters in the film be able to see it, wouldn't that be more frightening? You know, if you didn't have that to fall back on in order to establish who is this curse, surely that'd be more frightening. And also, it would avoid some of the sillier scenes in the movie where you have shit floating, you know, when this curse is affecting stuff, and you see it through the eyes of people who can't see it, and it just looks like stuff floating through the air, and it was a bit stupid. The CGI budget wasn't there in order to do that convincingly. That was the main flaw, in that they don't establish the rules very well. And I know that people will say that, oh well, you know, you only get to know what the characters get to know and all that, but to me, if I found out that I was being followed by some sort of demon that wanted to kill me, I'd be researching that shit and trying to find a way to defeat it. That brings me to another criticism, in that the third act of this movie is completely ridiculous. It's a set piece that takes place at a swimming pool, and at no point do they explain why they go to this swimming pool, why they think that their plan against the demon will work. It just doesn't explain anything. And for that reason, it makes you think that the characters are all pretty stupid. So, again, it just is another underdeveloped aspect of the script. That's not to say, though, that I didn't enjoy watching the film, because I actually did. I know that I've sat here and bashed it for a few minutes, but I actually found it to be quite effective. A lot of the scares were quite effective. It doesn't rely on jump scares at all. I think I can remember one jump scare in the entire thing, but the idea of just seeing somebody walking towards you from a distance, that's scary to me, and it does that really well. However, it does sacrifice some of those scares, because the demon can turn into anyone, but it doesn't give you an idea as to why it turns into this person at a certain time. You know, it might turn into somebody who is already in the scene, so there's two of them, and it's like, well, why would it do that? That doesn't make any sense. It just... they sacrifice a lot of the scares and character work in this for style over substance, and that's the reason that it's quite a disappointing movie. It's a film that, when I was discussing it with my partner, I was really defending it, but the more that I've thought about it since watching it, the less it makes sense, really, and the more disappointing it is. I was really looking forward to a genuinely frightening horror movie with a good, strong female lead, and that's not what I got. I got a moderately unnerving movie with characters that I couldn't give two shits about. It needed to be more than that. I feel like it's maybe a victim of its own hype. It's not completely without merit, you know, it's an unnerving 90 minutes, and I think how the director builds tension and suspense over the 90 minutes is, for the most part, very effective. Overall, though, it feels like a missed opportunity, and that with a better writer, because I feel like the director, I believe he wrote and directed this, he was so preoccupied with the visuals of the movie and visual homages to previous horror movies that he forgot to fully develop the script and the characters. So I feel like with a better writer on board, this could have been a modern horror masterpiece. As it stands, though, it's quite disappointing, and if you do go in to watch it, I would recommend going in with moderated expectations. Otherwise, like me, you might fall victim to its hype and be disappointed. It Follows, unfortunately, it's disappointing.